Yeah, and what you were saying before about the decision to quit caffeine and everything that went into that, I was forced to confront my own framework for what substances I would allow myself to become dependent on because I used Kratom for about 2.5 years and I used it most of the time as a caffeine.
What's
uh,
that? Is that like a pre-workout as well, or?
so Kratom, the scientific name of Kratom is Metrogena speciosa, and it's a plant that's grown in Southeast Asia, and it grows as a leaf, but it's ground up into green, sometimes red powder, and you take it as a tea. So you put it
Mm.
in. I put it in hot water, just mix it around, and it produces a an awake euphoric effect that I would say is on par with coffee if you haven't drank coffee in a while. But then there's also this mechanism that makes you feel more empathetic. I
Mm.
always felt like it was kind of coffee plus empathy for me. Like I would walk around and I would just feel like more connected to people, and I felt more creative when I was on Kratom, and I was taking it in pretty low amounts compared to some other regular Kratom users. I would take about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon at a time, and I did that for about 2.5 years as a caffeine replacement. I would
Mm.
have one coffee in the morning, and then after that, I'd switch. I'd have a couple cups of the Kratom tea.
And is there there's no caffeine in there, or?
No caffeine in
Okay,
Kratom.
so it's a separate thing that has similar effects. Is it technically a drug? Do you know?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
It's definitely a drug.
okay.
People say that it is an opioid, but I had someone on the podcast, Dr. Chris McCurdy, who studies kratom down at, I believe it's the University of Florida, or some university in Florida, but he told me that kratom is not classified as an opioid because it
Mm.
actually acts on many different systems in the body, not
Mm.
just the opioid system. He described it as a symphony effect, where it's kind of just like branching out to everything.
Sounds
Uh,
pretty pleasant.
yeah, it in low amounts, that was the desired effect for me was the lower amounts. The more you take it, the more it feels like a relaxant. But in lower amounts, I felt this, and a lot of other people report feeling this, that it's similar to a caffeine high, or like a coffee high, like coffee, but like a warmer feeling, or maybe
Mm.
like a more dulled Adderall, like nowhere near as strong as that, but like it sort of gives you like that upper effect. And so I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I started traveling, and I real or traveling more, and I realized how many countries kratom was illegal in. It's illegal in a lot of like 7 or 8 different countries in the EU that I would like to travel to and have already traveled to. It's illegal in Japan, which I ended up going to without kratom. It's illegal in Ireland, which I ended up going to without kratom. And so I never really had to think about this before because I was never one to travel with drugs. But like even the thought of getting caught internationally with drugs was such an anxiety inducing state to me that that was like 60 to 70% of the reason why I stopped taking it, because I didn't want to go on a trip, God forbid, get caught with kratom in a country like Japan where they have very stringent drug laws, or start a trip and then be coming off of the effects of kratom, kind of like caffeine withdrawal, where
Right.
you're just like kind of groggy for the first week, or like you're in a state that you don't want to be in. And that forced me to reconsider my framework for being dependent on kratom. And then I was also running into some sleep issues, which I just stopped taking a lot of supplements altogether at that time to figure out what it was, and it was probably kratom. But yeah, that's sort of my my framework. I have a different framework than you because you have it seems like a desire to be dependent on as little substances as possible. Whereas me, my framework is I'm willing to be dependent on a small amount of substances, not necessary for survival, but it can't interfere or boost my anxiety. It can't interfere with my sleep at all, uh,
Yeah,
and it can't be illegal, which has to do with
right.
anxiety because that's it's just stressful to think about that.